Joining me now for more is Shanthie Mariet D'Souza. She's a founding professor at Kautilya School of Public Policy in Hyderabad, India, and spent over a decade working on the ground across Afghanistan. Shanthie, welcome. So when we see what the Taliban are doing now and having these very high-level meetings with former government officials, including the High Commission for Reconciliation, do you envision what the government under the Taliban will look like down the road?
Well, I think it's a bit early to say what the government will look like, but what they're trying to do is to reach out to different opposition leaders to make it appear that they're going to have an inclusive government. So they reach out to the former President Karzai, to the National Commission of Reconciliation, the chairman, Dr. Abdullah, Hikmatyar of the Hizb Islamic group. All of these are important opposition leaders. So this outreach is an attempt to make them more acceptable, reduce the resistance, and make them appear as if they are an inclusive government, so that there is a kind of an international recognition and legitimacy given to them, and also to reduce the resistance which is building up in Afghanistan. And we see that with former Vice President Amrullah Saleh, who's taken on the role of a caretaker president now, and is building up resistance in Panjshir.
Yeah, and that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? How much of this is window dressing and how much of this will really lead to an inclusive government? You sound doubtful. Many around the world are extremely doubtful of this. But there's also a sense that in the modern world, if they're going to need to interact with the international community as well as avoid civil war, they're going to have to change from 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's obvious, and they're trying to do that. But that doesn't mean it will hold true in the time to come. So it's early. I think for the next 3-4 months, they'll be just consolidating their position. So having said that the debacle which occurred so fast in Kabul was not really expected for the international community. I think the Taliban themselves are not prepared of how to go about this governance structures, and they don't want opposition at the moment. And interestingly, even their leadership and the leader, Hamid is not to be seen at the moment. So we do see mixed signals coming in terms of the leadership and the command and control structure of the Taliban. We do see mixed signals about how they're going to deal with the international community, and more importantly about issues of women's rights and human rights. The media images which we see in Kabul is very different from what they're actually doing in the provinces, where they're back to imposing their brutal ways, and that fear and panic has led to a situation where Afghans are desperate to leave the country.
You know, Shanthie, what's fascinating today, too, is to see how much in gains these resistance fighters have made, starting in Panjshir, but moving now to within 60 kilometers of the capital. So they've managed to gain some ground against the Taliban in just a few days. Is this a fascinating situation to you and something that you're watching closely?
Yes, I am watching this closely because this is what happened in the 1990s. The leader of the then Northern Alliance, Ahmad Shah Massoud, held on to the Panjshir area from where he built up the resistance. And this seems to be a repeat of that situation where Amrullah Saleh has taken on the flag for the Northern Alliance. And he is a legitimate leader, given that he was the vice president, and now under the Afghan constitution, he is the caretaker president. So he's building up a resistance, which is legitimate in many ways. And the advances they are making is not so surprising, because they do have fighters and they do have people who are ready to support them. What happened actually in Kabul was that no one expected the leadership to flee so easily, and that demoralized the forces. So if you have to actually look at the situation of how the Afghan forces melted away, it was more a failure of political leadership rather than the military might of the Afghans. And the signs which they're showing now in terms of the advances they're making is that they have regrouped and they are getting assistance to carry on this resistance forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Shanthie, thank you for your insight.